Greetings, viewers, and welcome to today's info sharing snippet session. We will be covering the data distribution feature within Sage 200 Evolution. Now, the data distribution services is a very unique feature within Sage 200, as it allows you to import relevant information directly into your Sage Evolution database. Right, so in order to access the Sage data distribution services, you need to go to your install directory, which would normally be under your program files x86, find the Evolution install folder, and within that directory, look for something called Evolution DDS. Right, so I'm just going to run this application, and your data distribution service will then open. Now, the data distribution services actually runs outside of Evolution. So when installing Evolution for the first time, you would need to signify that you want to install the application, and then it will install directly into your install directory. Right, so when we go in, you'll notice a couple of options there. And what we're essentially doing is we're going to be importing data, normally from a CSV file, directly into your database. So if you look currently in my existing database, I have a list of customers. And for example, you may want to import customers because obviously they're coming into your system. And the data distribution services allows you to import master file records, transactions, etc. So firstly, I'm going to go create a template. And this template is going to be used for my importing as well as my exporting. So very often, perhaps you may not be familiar with the import file column layout. So the best option we would recommend is that you perhaps just create one record within your database and then export that template so you know exactly how the columns are formulated and which columns need to be populated when importing your information. So firstly, we're going to be doing an export of our existing records, and we then need to go to New and specify the package. Now in this case, we're going to be exporting from an existing company. So the package would then be Evolution. And if we go next, we need to specify what is it that we want to export. So as you can see, there's a whole range of options that can be exported. These include things like customers, suppliers, GL accounts, BOM master items, etc., supply groups, inventory price lists, etc. So I'm just going to say customers, and I then need to specify where am I going to send this information to. So in this case, I'm going to browse for the ASCII, which is an ASCII file option, and I can say OK there. And that's the initial stage of my template. Now we just need to go and configure the information on our template. And there are three options there. General, which gives us a description for the export. Publisher, which is going to provide details of the SQL server and the database name from which the export is taking place. So I'm going to firstly specify the SQL server name. And depending if you're using Windows NT authentication or SQL authentication, and then from which database is this information going to be exported. So there's my database. So SQL server, authentication method and connection, and the database from where the information is going to be exported from. Under Publisher 2 of 2, just obviously specify exactly what records you want to export from that particular template. And under Subscriber, we've got a couple of options here. So firstly, I'm going to go Subscriber 2 of 2, and I'm going to just details about the file that you're going to be used to export if you're not going to go create an existing file. And then on Subscriber 1 of 2, I'm just going to go specify the actual file name that's going to be holding the information that exported. So let's just say, for example, I'm going to go and browse for a file. I'm going to go create one. So let's just say, for example, And very importantly, I need to make this file a .csv file. Right, so there we go. And just specify if there's going to be a header record on this file or not. Details about the delimiter and information about the Windows data format. So it's as simple as that. Publisher, details about the server name and the database name. Subscriber, details about the export file that's going to be generated upon the export process being completed. So I'm just going to, in the interim, I'm just going to close the program, and I'm going to actually export all these records from within my current database. Right, that's been closed, and now it's simply a case of highlighting my relevant template and just saying run now. So there we go, there's my new template, and run now. Right, it's gone through, and I'm able to go view a log file just to check how the export took place. So I go to view log file, and as you can see, it's going to give me details about the date and time of the export happening, and also details about the number of records that were exported, and also details about the export file that was created upon the export process taking place. Right, so everything seems to have gone through correctly, no problems there. And I'm simply going to go into my database or my location, and there's my export file. So there we go, open it up. And as you can see, there's details of how that information has been exported into my CSV file. So as I mentioned previously, this is a very useful process to follow, and based on this information, you would then have sort of an idea of exactly which fields need to be populated with what information when doing the import of your database records. So there I've got my DC link, which is a unique identifier, details about the account number, the customer name, etc., and all the necessary tables that SQL uses when creating, for example, in this case, customer master file records. Right, so then I could then just use this template and this file, populate with my new records, and then use that to import. Quite easy. So I'm just going to, at this particular point, I'm not going to save this file, because what I have done in the interim is I've now gone to go and create a file that I'm going to be using for my import. So in this case, it's a case of going back to our data distribution services. And as you can see, it was a plugin which was going from my Evolution database, which was the customers module, customer master file, going into an ASCII file format. Right, that's the export process. So now we need to go and run an import, which is going to be an import of my new records into the database. So firstly, I've gone to go and create an import file, which contains my new records to be imported. And in this particular instance, I've only used 3 columns. So I've got the customer code or account number, I have the customer name, and then details about the credit limit for those customers. Right, so it is a .csv file, and back in DDS, I'm simply going to now go and create a template which is going to be used for my importing of data. So once again, new. However, in this case, we're going to be doing import, so we're saying it's coming from an ASCII file, which is going to be our CSV file. So there's ASCII. Right, and then what is it that I'm going to be importing? In this case, it's my customers. Next, and where's information going to be exported or imported to? So if we go to browse, Evolution, there we go, and we finished. Right, so now we just need to configure, similar to the way that we configured our export information. So there's our description for the import. And in the Publisher 2 of Publisher, Got a couple of details regarding the file. So very important. I'm just going to go to publisher 2 of 2 first. Now, very importantly, publisher 2 of 2 is just an instance where you need to now go and map and configure the import file to the data distribution services template. Now, if you look at this mapping, you'll see that it contains every field which forms part of our initial export file. So as you can see, I can import all of these details from within the one CSV file. Now, what you notice is that there are 2 fields there which are not accessible, and these simply signifies that they are compulsory fields which must exist on my import file in order to import information. So reverting back to my import file, you'll see that code is column A, name is column B, which is fine. As I say, those are 2 compulsory fields which are on my import file, and then credit limit. So I just need to now configure it and say, for example, code, that is the first column. So I'll highlight it and use the up and down arrow keys to move up to position number 1. Name we know is a compulsory field, but also in column number 2. So put that in the 2nd position. And then the other field that I want to import is going to be credit limit. So I simply highlight that field and move up. And I'm going to place this in position number 3. Right, so there we go. Position 3. So code, name, credit limit. And that then corresponds with the columns on my input file. No problem there, the mapping is correct. Then we simply need to go to publisher 1 of 2 and specify the file name that contains the input detail. That's going to be that one over there. Client import. And does the import file contain a header record or not? Yes, it does. Details about the delimiter, the Windows date format, etc. And we're good to go. Under subscriber, I now need to specify the SQL server details. And there's the instance name. In this instance, I'm using Windows NT authentication. And into which database am I importing these records? So there we go. There's my database. Resolved. And on subscriber 2 of 2, details about how I want to update the records that are going to be imported. Okay. Right, so just a confirmation. Import file name and the mapping, which must correspond to my import file, very important. And the subscriber 1 of 2, details about the SQL server name, the database name where the import is going to, and how am I going to handle the records that are going to be imported. Right, simple as that. So I'm just going to, very importantly, I need to close, ensure that the import file is closed before in the import process. So there we go, I'm going to close that. And I'm going to say don't save for the time being. There's no changes were made. And also ensure that evolution is closed. So it has been closed. And the ideal situation is obviously have no one working within Sage Evolution and ensure that the database is closed when the import process takes place. So that's all in order. Database is closed and we're good to go. So let's just say highlight our template and run now. And you may have missed it, but in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, there was a counter running through just telling me how many records were processed during the import. So let's just go and log into our database. And I'm going to log in as administrator. Okay. Right, there we go, we're up and running. And there we go. So back to my customers, I've now got the 4 customers that form part of my import file, have been imported via the DDS, quick and easy, and as you can see, a really effective way of importing records within the database. And I'm just going to go back into my DDS, and once again, just go back into the properties of one of my imports, and just go create a new one actually. You'll see that, as I mentioned previously, there's a vast number of options or data fields that can be imported, right from bill of material, components, master items, inventory transactions, customer transactions, supplier, GL transactions, and a whole range of master files. So it's simply a case of creating a CSV file together with your import information, checking that your mapping or your configuration on the ASCII file corresponds with your data distribution services settings, and you're good to go. And very importantly, just ensure that the import file is closed when the export or import occurs, and that no users are in the system. And then very importantly, just to ensure that everything has gone through correctly, we do have a log file, which then allows you just to check the status of the import or export to ensure that all records have been imported successfully. Right, so that's a wrap from me. Thank you so much for watching. It's over and out, and goodbye.